Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking Time for Hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. You are listening to Time for Hemp all around the world on Tumblr, SoundCloud, timeforhemp.com, and, of course, on iHeartRadio. You can also go to Google Plus Store and find an Android app called Time for Hemp that is free to download and put into your phone and share with your friends. A big thank you to all of my friends up in Canada. I want to say hello to KDK Distributors. They give us a grant to keep us loud, proud, and strong. And I also want to send my love to all of my friends over in Germany who have been listening in. Your letters have been interesting to read. And we will be having guests from the German hemp movement these next few weeks coming on to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Also, don't forget, we're not just a one show a week like we used to be at American Freedom Radio, listening to 5 days a week programming called Time for Hemp. We are a team of people that are broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and like a joint, we are best when shared with your friends. It is Thursday, and on Thursday we put a spotlight on the amazing hard work going on here in the United States by many of the what we now call local activists, local to me, because that's where I am in the United States. Those of you who are listening in Canada and England and Germany and so on. And one of the hardworking activists that I'm proud to stand alongside with, Paul Stanford, is also reaching around the world with a hug with Mother Nature in the form of a farm. He's farming new plants for us to take advantage of and turn these crops into industrial products. I'll let Paul share that a little bit, and then we've got an awesome guest to talk here on Time for Hemp. Paul, you've been busy, haven't you?
Yes, I have. We're in the business right now, expanding our operation and about to go on the over-the-counter stock market, where people will be able to buy our stock through E-Trade or Charles Schwab or any other broker. And so there's several companies in the medical marijuana space that are doing that now, and we're going to join them in being one of the first to do so. So we're pretty excited about that. You've got a great guest here today.
We do, and I'm pretty excited about all the hard work that he's involved with. Those of you out there who are listening might know Dr. David Ostrow. He's from the Chicago area. They're at the Chicago Multi-Center. And Dr. Ostrow, for those who do not know of you, this is an opportunity to introduce yourself and how it was you got involved in the medical marijuana movement.
Well, that's a great question. The simplest answer is that I was an expert in the field, I still am, I guess, of HIV, particularly the mental health and addiction aspects of it. And in my research, I found that most drugs that people abused were associated with higher rates. It didn't have to be an intravenous drug. It could be any drug that loosened one's inhibitions and led to more unprotected sex. But there was always one exception, and that was marijuana, cannabis, hashish, weed, 420, whatever you called it. And those people who used that generally had lower rates of HIV infection, and those who were unfortunate enough to get infected had what appeared to be slower rates of progression of the disease. So that got me very interested in my own use of medical cannabis for several problems that I had. So I began my work by thought I would start with an easy topic, trying to get the AMA to change its policies to protect any patients in medical marijuana programs in states that had authorized them, at which point California being the main one. And as you can imagine, that was really resisted also by the American Psychiatric, where it was very active. And it appeared to me that there's something fishy about it, because the people who always allowed us against it were those who were making the most money off of the diagnosis. They either ran treatment facilities for young teen marijuana users, or they ran training programs for the drug companies on how to treat pain, or using their products and avoiding marijuana, etc. And also, of course, seeing that all the side effects of cannabis were just totally made up by the government, that you couldn't believe a word that the government was saying or putting out and so forth. Well, AMA and the APA didn't go along with it at first, but then even a much better organization, the ACP, Association of Practicing Clinicians, a very large organization, they put out a statement that included all of our principles, including the one that the government had to stop holding a monopoly on the growing and processing of legal marijuana for research purposes, which they still haven't done, but they're opening up the availability of it to other people. And that sort of got me started, and next thing I know, I'm very much involved in the attempts to get a bill passed here in Illinois that made sense. It kind of makes sense. And as a researcher looking at longitudinal studies, I proposed back in about 2010 that we form some kind of a national network of people doing cannabis research, doctors in their offices, dispensaries, groups, collectives, etc., and capture that data to be able to start thinking about what would be science-based guidelines for treatment. As you know, it was later than that we discovered that most of what was being sold in dispensaries for pain actually didn't have very much of the cannabinoids that we would think would be most helpful for pain, and were mostly high in THC, whether they were called indicas or sativas. So the coming along of analytical labs that can very precisely tell you what is the amount and the dose delivered by each product should enable us to pinpoint what are the best mixtures of cannabinoids, or the best route of ingestion for people suffering from particular illnesses or symptoms like pain or neuropathy, or even syndromes like what's called PTSD, which is really a breadbasket for a whole lot of chronic stress-related disorders.
And I also noticed that you were at one time the senior investigator for the cannabinoid, I had problems pronouncing, Therapies Translational Research Project. What on earth? That's a big title. What is that?
Well, that just happened. It's ongoing. And if anybody's attending the American Psychiatric Association meeting May 20th in Toronto, we're having a symposium on utilizing the growing databases on cannabis to develop cannabinoid-based treatments for various illnesses. What happened was, about a year ago, the congressional committee that was looking into rescheduling marijuana, called Nora Volkov, who's the head of NIDA, National Institute of Drug Abuse, in for questioning. It ended up being 2 days, and it was like she had to take the fifth with all these questions. Why don't we know what are the long-term effects of cannabis, or the long-term therapeutic effects? And she had to keep saying, we don't know. We didn't do the research. And what she would have said, if she was being honest, she would have said, I was prevented from doing that research by the war on drugs, which made me swear that when it come in that I would do nothing in my agency or any other government research agency that would be in opposition to the idea that cannabis is a Schedule I drug and the key to the whole war on drugs thing. But in private conversations with her and with her colleagues from Stanford, I knew that she was, very positive on the potential for cannabis. She just couldn't discuss it with anybody. And so after that drilling, I think they looked around and they thought, well, we don't have any money right now, but are there any projects that we have that we could cull data from that will help answer these questions? And lo and behold, her agency had been supporting my work for the last 33 years, studying gay men with HIV. We collected data on all their drug use, on their disease progression, on their rate of acquiring HIV and other infections, and we even put away every 6 months samples of their lymphocytes. And we had the largest collection in the world, like 500 men who seroconverted with HIV during that. And I, of course, had published several times that we never saw any negative effects of cannabis, unlike most other drugs that we used by our cohort. And they had another investigator at Harvard, at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, who had been looking at the ability of cannabinoids to prevent HIV from entering into human T lymphocytes that had been grown up in tissue culture. And some of you may also know that if you pre-treat certain genders of macaque simians, and then you expose with THC, and then you expose them to a large dose of HIV on the genitalia, it will significantly reduce the rate of infection there. So they gave us a small grant to start up a project, and we're just getting the protocols finished, and we have a 3-stage program that's going to attempt to develop cannabinoid-based therapies, both to prevent HIV infection and to significantly slow down the progression of the disease in those already infected. So in a way, it would be like a vaccine that's been unable to be found. It would work both in preventing infection, transfer the infection, and but we're a long way off, and obviously it's a difficult task, but I thought it was very significant that and NIDA and NIH turned to us as their best hope for overcoming this lost 10 years of opportunity in learning what medical marijuana was about.
I have a collection of antique medical marijuana containers. I have about 400.
Yeah.
And out of those 400, about 150 of them have contents, and about 70 of them are full. But they say, and they're from companies like Park Davis. Park Davis had 10 different cannabis medicines. Half of them were just cannabinoids. They had solid extract from a flower, so it was done in a sifting process. They had several different fluid extracts, and they also mixed it with other drugs for various conditions. But the containers say on their labels, the wide variety of things that in conditions that cannabis can be used for. But that aside, I think we've missed not just 10 years, but 80 years of medical research, that they put these companies basically out of business, with this
it's very interesting. When they passed the Marijuana Tax Act and subsequent ones, they made up the name marijuana because they didn't want to put the drug companies that manufacture cannabis extracts out of business. So part of our public relations spiel has been get rid of marijuana. That's not the name of this. It is cannabis, and there's a long history, both in the United States and you can go back to millennia, and you can find all kinds of
there's
writings.
Dr. Woodward, who went before Congress on behalf of the AMA.
Right.
Came in during the hearing. He hadn't been invited, but he came in and said, "We just found out that this stuff you're calling marijuana is cannabis, and you can't prevent cannabis. Cannabis is a useful medicine for many different conditions. It was the second, outside of opiates at the time, the second most prescribed substance." And
but the government is so two-sided in all of this. On the one hand, they can say there's no known or potential benefit, but for over 10 years, the government itself has had a patent on cannabis as a treatment for cancer.
Exactly, and chronic pain. But this doctor went before this committee in Congress, and then the committee voted in favor of the Marijuana Tax Act. So it went to the floor of the House of Representatives. And when the Speaker of the House introduced the bill, he said, "This is a bill about something called marijuana." That is written into the record, so the part. And so, and that was Sam Rayburn from Bonham, Texas, who was the Speaker of the House for over 30 years. But Rayburn said, "We're introducing something called marijuana." He grew hemp back on his farm in Bonham, Texas, so he didn't obviously know that marijuana was hemp either. But anyway, the people from the committee went on the floor of Congress and lied and said that the American Medical Association supports this bill to prohibit cannabis. So that's just a little bit further.
Well, I get that response when I speak to medical students, and I tell them that everything that the government says about marijuana is untrue or exaggerated, and I have some medical students who stand up angry at me and say, "How could you say that what the government is saying to us is untrue?" Well, I'm sorry, but you've been brainwashed.
Yeah. That's it. They say
I call it the big lie. It's it all started with Hearst and yellow journalism. He printed his papers on yellow paper because it was cheaper, and he was the one, along with Anslinger, who just defined all of America's problems stemming from the uncontrolled, crazy, drug-addled individual and the greatest scourge in the world. And then we forced this attitude on the whole rest of the world, even where some of these drugs were part of their culture and so forth. And these countries are going down.
The story was marijuana causes you to go crazy and kill your family and friends, as depicted in the movie Reefer Madness and Marijuana Assassin of Youth. And these were produced by the Bureau of Narcotics, the present-day Drug Enforcement Administration. They merged all the drug agencies in the federal government in 1972 under Richard Nixon. But, the history aside, one of the things you said is that you're investigating cannabis and its role in preventing HIV and other infections. Now, there are several cannabinoids in cannabis, one of them being CBC, or cannabichromine, and that has potential effects in fighting multi-resistant varieties of infections, streptococci, and other infections. And so, what is your findings, or have you been able to
well, we're just getting off the ground
how cannabis prevents these infections?
Well, that's just getting off the ground. We know that in the test tube studies that have been done so far in Dana Gabuzner's lab at Harvard and other places, that surprisingly THC seems to be the strongest inhibitor. And you think, gee, this is a lymphocyte, an immune cell. Why would THC? Well, it turns out the whole, kind of like standard logic of the CB1 and the CB2 receptors and what each one does and what is the pure agonist or antagonist at each place is much more complicated than what we've been thinking. The dogma has to be looked at much more subtly. And there's a whole other pathway in lymphocytes and cancer cells. This is very parallel to the work that's going on in cancer and cannabinoids. And it controls when a cell will divide. And they don't know the exact reason why, but when you turn on the either the CB1 or the CB2 receptor and you allow ion channels to open up, those that affects the system that tells the cell when it's time to divide. And you need cell division in the lymphocyte to get a productive HIV infection, because it has to be converted from RNA to DNA and inserted into the cell's nucleoplasm. And so without cell division, that does not happen. And so we think that's the mechanism, and it's very similar to the mechanism in cancer cells. But we're getting really down to very fundamental aspects of basic science of how cells regulate their rate of division and protect themselves from infection by particular organisms, so forth. Interesting enough, the same mechanism is being looked at in the treatment of Ebola virus.
Well, I need to jump in here because I'm looking at a mechanism that's called my budget. It requires attention on a regular basis, and to make that happen, we take commercial breaks, and then we're going to listen to a song about how fantastic marijuana is, and then come back and pick up where we left off here at Time for Hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
THCF Medical Clinics are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
I smoke marijuana, yeah. And in the evening time, when I'm alone, I smoke marijuana, yeah. Oh, marijuana. Oh, marijuana, yeah. Oh, I got my ganja. Like a rasta, yeah. In the morning light, I lie awake. I smoke marijuana.
Take that weed out the bag, sprinkle it slow, cross the zigzag, hold it up, roll it up, tighter and tighter, grab your lighter, flick it, pull the smoke, be cool, don't show, let it out, that's what getting hot is all about. Look through the bottoms of your eyelids, feel like you did when you was a little kid, happy, positive and mellow, spreading love on to the next fella. Oh lady, I look like I'm shady, cause my eyes are redder than Grady. You know the boys from my neighborhood, we look real bad but we feel so good.
And if I'm old and gray and I live alone,
what you gon' do, homeboy?
I smoke marijuana,
I'ma be right there with you, come on.
And in my garden I will grow my own.
You gon' grow it? Hey,
marijuana,
sing it, come on.
Oh, marijuana.
Hey, speaking of which,
Oh, marijuana.
can you pass that over here, please?
I got my ganja.
I'm about to get my ganja. Yeah.
Dread like a rasta. Come on, dread it like a rasta.
Come on.
Oh, I got my ganja.
I'm finna get the blunt. Yeah, man.
Dread like a rasta.
Let me hit it one time.
Oh, how I wish I was in Jamaica.
Alright, we can go there.
We dread like a rasta.
Yeah, man. I got my ganja.
Dread like a rasta.
What's up? Yeah.
Marijuana. Gonna burn it up, yeah.
Yeah.
Marijuana. Gonna burn it up, yeah. Marijuana. Gonna burn it up, yeah. Marijuana.
Afro Man and Friends, and we're going to burn it up. And I can certainly tell you, every time I hear that song, I am dancing around the studio, kicking my heels up, and enjoying my 420 break. We are having an awesome conversation with an amazing activist that I've worked very, very long with now. I couldn't believe how much time had flown, almost a half a decade of me being here in Portland, Oregon. Thanks to the amazing team of Paul Stanford and Friends. And Paul, I really am lucky and blessed to have such a wonderful and caring friend like you here on the battlefield in the war on drugs to help me survive in my foxhole as we win this horrific war. And thank you for all that you have done. And every Friday night we work diligently in front of a camera. And I'll let you tell people about that and then get back to our joint conversation with our joint friend, Dr. David Ostrow. Also, don't forget, anytime you hear the word joint on the Big Joint broadcast, nearly 2.5 million people all around the world hit their bongs, their pipes, their vaporizers, roll up their joints, and take time for hemp. Paul, why don't you let our joint audience know about our joint work Friday night?
Yeah, I've been doing this show, Cannabis Common Sense, and Casper joined me on it several years back. I started in 1996. We've done about almost 800 shows, hour-long shows called Cannabis Common Sense, and we're live every Friday night. We've got a live show tomorrow night, and you can watch it on Ustream. That's the letter U, STREAM.TV. Look up Cannabis Common Sense there. And we also have a huge archive of shows, hundreds and hundreds of shows on YouTube. Just look up Cannabis Common Sense there if you want to see the most recent ones. But it streams live at 8 p.m. on Friday night on Ustream.tv.
And it is fun to get together jointly each Friday night and hang out with our joint friends and pass the joint message out to everybody who's listening. And thank you, David, for being on our joint broadcast. I know you and Paul were involved in a great joint chat. Paul, David, I'll let you get back to that while I sit here and enjoy my joint at Time for Hemp.
You had mentioned earlier, Paul, that there's a lot going on in the whole battle over rescheduling of cannabis. I just like to say that it's being prohibited by being put in Class 1 has been the major stumbling block to doing research, from my opinion, to find out what's going on. But I think its inclusion at all in the schedule of narcotic drugs is a bit of a reach on the part of the government.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. You know, I encourage people to grab a pen or a pencil or a notepad program on your computer to take a little note here and note down the Federal Controlled Substances Act is Title 21 of the United States Code, or the USC. So there's a specific section of the Federal Controlled Substances Act, which was passed, you know, as I mentioned earlier, back in 1972. It merged all the various drug agencies, such as the Bureau of Narcotics and other agencies, into the Drug Enforcement Administration back then. But it set up this whole scheduling system, which had always been the province of the states. It's a power specifically granted to the states to regulate medical practices. It's not a power granted in the Constitution to the federal government, and therefore it devolves to the states. And so the states control that. And, you know, we always hear this argument that federal law trumps state law, and that's true in most cases. But when they wrote the Controlled Substances Act, Congress recognized that they were intruding into regulations that all the states had implemented on their pharmaceutical industries and pharmacists and medical doctors and doctors of osteopathy and other forms of medicine. And so they put in a clause into Title 21 of the United States government. It's Section 903. So the actual citation, this is where you grab your pen, is 21 USC 903. 21 USC 903. And when you look that up, it is the application of state law. And it says specifically that state law takes precedence over federal law when it comes to drug scheduling, unless there is a positive conflict. And so back in 2009, the Oregon legislature became the first legislature to reschedule marijuana. The legislature ordered the Board of Pharmacy to reschedule marijuana between Schedule 2 and 5. And so the Board of Pharmacy dragged its heels for a couple of years, and they finally went ahead and rescheduled marijuana as Schedule 2. So in the state of Oregon, marijuana is not a Schedule 1 drug. It's a Schedule 2 drug. And since then, the Iowa legislature has also included marijuana in Schedule 2. So there's several different means to change cannabis scheduling. The federal court in California just last week declined to order the DEA to reschedule marijuana. Now, the toothless administrative law judges that control the DEA are advised the DEA, that's what I should say, not control, but advised the DEA, have advised the DEA on a couple of occasions that they should reschedule marijuana, but the administrator of the Drug Enforcement Administration has always said, oh, no, we're not going to do that because it was a specious finding by the administrative law judge. And so you look at, for instance, Francis Young's voluminous report on rescheduling marijuana, which was the first one that said, you know, marijuana is safer than many common foods that we eat. And another quote from administrative law judges, Francis Young's finding was, marijuana in its natural form is among the safest therapeutically active substances known to man, but still it remains in Schedule 1. And so that's because the DEA has fought it tooth and nail. Fortunately, we just saw the resignation or retirement of the 7-year administrator of the DEA, Michelle Reinhart, but she's been fighting rescheduling and fighting marijuana legalization and medical marijuana at every step. She led the prosecutions in Los Angeles about 12 years ago as the head DEA agent or DEA officer in Los Angeles. But the fact of the matter is the federal government scheduling, the president could order rescheduling, the Congress could order rescheduling, and the federal courts just declined to order rescheduling, saying it's a legislative issue. So that just shows that the basis of marijuana prohibition has never really been drugs. Marijuana prohibition has always been about energy, bioenergy, and that's the reason that marijuana is prohibited. As our Casper and my late great friend, Kentucky attorney Gatewood Galbraith said, it's the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate, elite, fascist sons of a bitches that gave us marijuana prohibition. And that's the fact. It was basically the petrochemical industry that realized that marijuana, hemp seed oil, was going to displace a percentage of their petrochemicals. And they made up the whole marijuana myth. When you look at Harry Anslinger, the first head of the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Bureau of Narcotics, from 1931 to 1961, he was a nephew of the Secretary of the Treasury and holder of a lot of petrochemical industry stock. And he married the niece of Andrew Mellon. And Mellon basically pushed through marijuana prohibition, and they did it with misinformation, saying there's this deadly new drug called marijuana that causes people to go crazy and kill their family and friends. And really it's hemp and cannabis, which is the oldest crop known to man. All archaeologists agree it's the oldest crop, and it's also the most productive crop. It produces more fuel, fiber, food, medicine, and social concoction. And it's been cultivated at least 12,000 and perhaps 25,000 years, and is probably the reason humans invented agriculture back in prehistoric times. So
I just want to hear and say I agree with everything that you said, Paul, but I don't want you to forget also that the choice of cannabis, marijuana, whatever, as the poster boy for the war on drugs was also because of the people who used it and the ongoing use of stigma and imprisonment and just, get these people out of my society and my home, because the people that really introduced it were Mexican migrant workers that were coming up and smoking this strange cigarette on their breaks, and blacks moving up north.
That's the propaganda they used, and it was a racist time. So they used racism. In fact, the very word marijuana comes from a Mexican Revolutionary War song. It comes from Pancho Villa's song La Cucaracha. Is one of the roots of it. So they used this anti-Hispanic racism to prohibit it based on these lies. And it
still is the case. Still, you look at someone like the governor, I'm ashamed to admit, of my home state, this guy Chris Christie, and he says, when I'm elected president, I'm going to throw all these addled addicts with no self-control into prison. And so my comment was, what about these addled with no self-control food addicts who need to be thrown into weight concentration?
I need to kick that habit myself. That's the main problem with cannabis is the munchies. It's good for people with AIDS or wasting syndrome or a lot of different conditions, but it's not good for me.
It sounds like
no reason for it being there. It's political. It's them versus us, and it's a form of control over society. And what
exactly. Marijuana prohibition was never about drugs. Drugs are a smokescreen. It's really about control and the continued centralization of economic and political control. Marijuana prohibition's always been about money and power and control.
Well, speaking of money, we are going to take a commercial break and pay our bills and come back in exactly 2 minutes and 25 seconds here at Time for Hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
Serious Seeds is your source for quality cannabis and sativa seeds. Serious Seeds are the creators of legendary strains like AK-47, Bubblegum, Chronic, Cali Mist, and White Russian. The AK-47 is probably the most awarded strain on the planet. The high THC content of AK-47 makes it the perfect medical strain for patients seeking quick pain relief. Cali Mist is an almost pure sativa. Female medical cannabis patients have reported that this strain helps relieve menstrual cramps. Serious Seeds just acquired another Dutch high-quality seed bank, Magus Genetics. From now on, Serious Seeds can offer you even more award-winning strains. The fine folks at Serious Seeds strive to breed the best cannabis genetics that they can find, so patients can rely on the effectiveness of their medicine. Go to SeriousSeeds.com to grow your medicine. That site again is SeriousSeeds.com.
You are listening to Time for Hemp Live. And, well, no, we are recorded. I keep forgetting that. We were live so many years in a row on American Freedom Radio. We wish them well.
Take two.
You can't hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I just said, so take two.
Okay. Thank you for joining us here at Time for Hemp. And I want to remind you that we are like a joint, best when you share us with your friends. We have an exciting conversation here that you all need to share with your friends as well. You can download these MP3s at timeforhemp.com. There's about 5 years or more, 6 years of archives of just radio programming that you can find on my area of the site alone. Gentlemen, we are down to the last 12 minutes of the program. I want to sit back and learn as much as I can along with the audience as the two of you continue with your joint chat here on Time for Hemp.
Was the part about the social control aspects of the whole war on drugs and the prohibition of cannabis, was that on the air or not?
No, it wasn't.
I don't believe so.
No, so that's something you can cover now.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add to all of Paul's arguments about ending prohibition and rescheduling or even eliminating cannabis being in the schedule, that when you look at the history of it, it's always been also not again about the drug, but about the people who used it. And we've always used stigmatization and pushing to the fringe and disenfranchisement, and now our prisons are filled with nonviolent users of drugs like marijuana. And they're 99% black, as we all know. And certainly that's not the representation of people who use marijuana or cannabis in our society. And so the earliest things like reefer madness and the yellow journalism of the Hearst papers, etc., all pictured the marijuana user as this fanatical sex maniac or homosexual or an immigrant from Mexico or a black man who would give your white daughter 2 puffs on a joint and she'd become his sex slave for the rest of her life and so forth. So we really have to know that this is not in isolation, but it's the American way of dealing with people we don't think are as good as us, and we want to purge our society.
They basically established this stigma around cannabis. So people who use it are afraid to come out of the closet, and now we're starting to do that, but there's still the stigma attached to it. And so we've been, ingrained with this stigma and this meaningless guilt about something that is actually very, very good for us. Marijuana is good for us. It will make us live longer. It will help establish homeostasis in your body. It will fight cancer. It will fight aging. It's an anti-aging, antioxidant properties that if you use cannabis, you'll live longer. When I first heard a fellow named Jack Harris say that, I thought it was crazy. But more and more research shows that cannabis extends and enhances longevity. And so it's something that everyone should be taking in one form or another if they want to have a healthy, happy life.
If the person on the other side is already convinced that this is the most dangerous and addictive drug known to man, and anybody who uses it should be considered a criminal.
Well, I know we're getting down to, something, I don't have the clock here, but something like 6 minutes, Casper. So
we have 8.
Tell us a little bit more about your program there in Chicago and Illinois. We haven't really touched on the implementation of the medical marijuana program in Illinois. How is that coming along? And what
it's coming along slowly. And again, the people who got most of the licenses were not the people who were the most compassionate or knowledgeable, but
by licenses you mean dispensary licenses, right?
You had to get licensed either to grow it and process it, or as a dispensary. And the regional distribution of dispensaries is not very good. But if these 11 or so cultivators get scaled up, we might have a first crop, say late spring, midsummer. But we already have hundreds and even thousands of people who've gone through the medical evaluation and recommendation, and even have gotten a license from the state. It's a long process.
Are they allowed to grow their own in Illinois under your law?
Just said, no grow your own, no importation. So these people are saying, I spent all this money and I still have to go buy it on the black market. So it's a jumpy. It's kind of a rough period, but we'll get over it. But I really feel
when you have your license in Illinois, you can go to Michigan. Michigan has reciprocity. So even though they don't regulate those dispensaries in Michigan, it's up to the individual dispensary owner whether they will service an Illinois patient. But they have reciprocity, so they're covered under Michigan's law. And I know if that patient came to Oregon, they would be able to get cannabis very cheaply. Our cannabis prices in Oregon are just $100 an ounce. The medical dispensary.
There in Denver, it was about $200 or so an ounce, but for patients, and almost double that for non-patients.
Yeah, exactly. And in Washington, it's $600 to $900 an ounce for adult recreational or adult social use cannabis.
Well, the way they set it up
in these stores is just crazy. It's feeding the black market. We need to make cannabis cheap and plentiful. And we're not going to do it with exorbitant taxes and unrealistic dispensary operations. So we've got to change the laws in Washington, especially with their $900 an ounce cannabis.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Colorado and Denver, and it's like, why can't we do it like they did? You
don't want to do it like they did it in Colorado. You don't want to do it like they did it in Washington, especially. That's even worse than Colorado.
No, I think Colorado is a good example. The stuff is 200 an ounce, and for patients.
That's better.
And,
but, I can grow that stuff for about $15 or $20 an ounce. I can grow it and produce it, and I do grow it, and I give it away for free in Oregon. In fact, over the past 10 years, I've given away over 3 tons of free marijuana to my patients. Because I have these clinics that make money, I spend about $125,000 a year to grow and give away free marijuana. Well over $1 million over the past decade. Casper is one of the beneficiaries, but thousands of sick and dying patients have been able to benefit from free cannabis that I'm able to give away. It's very cheap when you grow it outdoors.
What's your address, and when shall I come to your door?
1-800-723-0188 is the toll-free number. If you had your pen ready, it's hemp.org. That's the one that's easy to remember, HEMP.org.
Okay.
But tell us about your program, David. I know we're running out of time. How can
my program is just to try to keep the connection and the harm reduction in the movement. That is what my program is really about, and at the same time, empower the communities and the doctors and the researchers, etc., to do research, even though funding from the National Institutes of Health, etc., is not available. But if we're doing this work, it's very easy to join into a collaborative data collection and analysis program that would eventually yield a lot of very important scientific information, as well as lead us in the direction of what types of cannabinoids and terpenoids, etc., are essential for the anti-cancer, anti-HIV, all these serious diseases that the current medicines are either not adequate for or have many very deleterious side effects.
Well, we are down to the last couple of minutes of the big broadcast. This gives you a chance to give a shout-out to your favorite URLs, upcoming events, or hardworking activists you want people to be aware of. We'll start with our joint guest here on the big joint broadcast, Dr. David.
Yes, well, anybody who can be in Toronto on May 20th is welcome to come to the stakeholders meeting of the North American community-based Clinical Cannabis Research Network, which will be from 2 to 6 in the the Fairmont Royal Oak Hotel. But if they can't make it and they'd like more information, just send me an email at davidostrowconsulting.com.
And Paul,
is there a website for the event in Toronto? Is there a website for people to look at?
Yeah, www.davidostrowconsulting.org, and look under the North American community-based clinical cannabis evaluation and research network.
And Paul, do you have any joint shout-outs you want to give?
Oh, of course. I want to thank David for doing the show. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And Casper and I will be doing a live video broadcast on the Internet. We're on cable access television throughout Northwest Oregon. Over 400,000 home subscribers can watch it there, but we also broadcast on other cable systems in Denver and Seattle and Eugene and Salem, and you can see it live, though, at ustream.tv. That's the letter U, STREAM.tv. We're live every Friday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time. You have to adjust your clocks accordingly. You can find out more about my work and our clinics and everything else we do at hemp.org. That's HEMP.org. Thanks, Casper.
And I want to remind people that we are broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, letting the whole world know how important it is to end prohibition. And please make it a point to download all of the apps that you need to enjoy us on your smartphones and your tablets. And do make it a point to let the whole world know it really is time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look and spend some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for hemp. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 bales of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, time for hemp! Yeah!
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. The only broadcasting network dedicated to ending the global war on drugs on iHeartRadio.